Then glancing back through history, sometimes it's the small details, as opposite to the big sweeping ones, what speak more to the realities of day-to-day life over the centuries. This maxim couldn't be more appropriate for the Victorian era, an age of incremental and creative change make it by 1 minute, but poignant development after another. From the royal family to small town families, 19th century people established many of the customs and routines still follow it in the 21st century. Whether is mourning the dead, donning unique nickels, or playing these bizarre toys, these somethingly trivial activities provide ample insights into the peculiar ways Victorians passed their days. Oh, before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Cherny History channel. It can be studied enough what a big deal people made about Victorian and Albert's wedding. 2 cents upon 2 cents of people showed up to catch a glimpse of the procession. So what she would stick out amongst the crowd? Victoria chose a bright white dress made out of the delicate lace and refused to don his crimson-colored robes of state. Little did Victoria know she'd started a trend what would transit her era with her wedding attire, as biographer Julia Baird describes. Victoria was not the first to wear it, but she made it popular by example. Lace makers across England were thrilled by the sudden surge in the popularity of their handiwork. Now wedding dresses are the norm. With the rise of the middle class in the 9th century came plenty of exciting new toys for leisure and entertainment. One of the most popular of the century, the magic lantern, gave viewers access to impressive 3D moving images. Magic lanterns were returned for the parties, holidays and large gatherings. This special brought a streaming device creating the illusion of movement by projecting two dissolving images onto each other. Renders had access to a wide array of images, and the most requested was a pretty unnerving display featuring a sleeping man with enormous beard in pajamas was snoring and opening his mouth there with a whole series of rats going down his throat into his stomach. Londoners are noisy as duck, eternally drunk, the French poet Paul Verlaine articulated in 1972. Long before the Victorian era, the British loved to imbibe. The Iceland's love for alcohol reached new heights in the 1815s. Then water sources reached untenable levels of pollution. One writer bluntly stated in 1834, "He who drinks a tumble of London water has literally in his stomach more animated beings than there are men, women and children on the face of the globe." Diseases like cholera and typhoid proliferated in the water. The river Thames became so bogged down in sewage and later it literally smelled, culminating in the Great Sting of 1854. In order to avoid the grave, Londoners spent a lot of spare time at the pub. The groundbreaking union between the young Queen Victoria and her cousin Prince Albert kept the British citizenry enthralled. The boarding public emulated whatever the royal couple did. When Victoria and Albert started exchanging gifts on their births, holidays and anniversaries, they started a trend still prevalent today. The two lovebirds commissioned works of art for each other and purchased love tokens, surprising each other the secret presents. During their engagement, Albert bought Victoria a special ring, giving rise to a standard facet of most marriages. The royal wedding between Queen Victoria and her German Prince Albert was the biggest event of the 19th century. The pair officially said "I do" on February 10, 1814, but the year prior, in 1839, it was the 20th-year-old Victoria who proposed to her first cousin Albert. As the monarch, she needed to pose the question according to custom. Then Alfred said yes. Victoria couldn't contain her excitement. She wrote in her journal, "Oh, how I order and love him, I cannot say." Albert was just excited with the pairing and told a friend, "I have obtained the height of my desire." From coughing cattle to tragic car accidents, the London fog was so dense and polluted in the 19th century that it completely altered how people lived their lives. Smoke and fumes from the factories, coal-burning homes and locomotives created a still, a shy mist that coated everything and everyone. In the cities, residents adapted to the constant haze by adoring dark attire. Wearing grey and black saved Victorians from extra cleaning. Orchid hunting was a massive undertaking for the Victorian elites, many of whom were absolutely fixated on the exotic flowers. Instead of venturing out into the wilderness themselves, the wealthy hired their own orchid hunters to bring back the rarest and most colorful variety on the planet. These orchid collectors built impressive greenhouses to accommodate their delicate bounties. Scientists and explorers made names for themselves based on their orchid discoveries. Charles Darwin was an orchid fanatic, but his work with these flowers pales in comparison to Victorian botanist Benedict Russell, who reported identified 800 varieties and even lost a hand during an expedition. On a random stroll through early 19th century England, it was possible for most people on someone's path to be staring into a kaleidoscope, using the natural lights to glimpse at the glowing, broken pieces of glass inside. Sir David Brewster invented the device in 1816 while studying optics. His cylindrical and portable device, usually made of brass and embellished with wood or leather, had application that reached far beyond science. The general public was amazed by the infinity visual possibilities represented by the kaleidoscope, and the patterns people gazed upon inspired manufacturers of textiles, paper, and fine china. The kaleidoscope's popularity persisted in the Victorian era. There, the American inventor Charles Bush patented his own kaleidoscope in the 1870s. Unlike Brewster's, Bush's rested on a stand. These days, a few mouse clicks in Photoshop turn photograph into masterpieces. Back in the 19th century, however, photographers were more limited than it came to touching up their photos, but what didn't stop them from finding ways to alter their work. Researchers recently discovered pencil marks on photographic plates from the Victorian era, leading them to believe Victorian photo takes used the writing utensil to enhance their works. It turned out this was common practice in the last half of the Victorian era. A British photography journal in 1875 instructed photographers to use pencil on plans to add highlights and accents to their final prints. Memento Mori, Latin for "remember you must die," are souvenirs people gather to mourn the loss of their loved ones. Memento Mori took many forms in the Victorian era, but with the advent of affordable photographic equipment, one especially macabre tradition became popular: death portraiture. Mortality rates were high in Victorian England, so high that half of children under 5 were expected to perish. Poor living conditions for the lower classes matched with one disease epidemic after another made passing commonplace. Families paid photographers to snap pictures of their loved ones post-mortem. The dead were dressed in the finest garb and surrounded by their favorite treasures. In many cases, the corpses were flanked by their still very alive kin. Courtship was a big deal in Victorian times, and couples found innumerable ways to convey their affection for each other. Before text of Instagram photos, lovers commissioned engraved coins for each other. These love tokens included message, image, and personalized testaments to one part and personalized testaments to one partner's loves for another. Dating back to the Renaissance, love tokens were most popular around the 18th 1880s, then sentimentality and amorous gestures reached their height. In fact, in the US, a dime shortage was spawned by all the coins being engraved in the name of this tradition. It seemed chance by the shocked by the types of jewelry what was commonplace during the Victorian era, such as the made of human hair. Now as hair work, this art form involves incorporated intricately woven stands of hair into nickels, brushes, rings and watches. The hair jewelry could be used for husbands to hold their wives' clothes even then they weren't at home, or would be a memento mori after a loved one had passed. Hair saved is an important symbol of friendship and love at the time. According to the Victorian Gothic blog, husbands went to work winning watches Forbes fashioned all their wives' hair. Locks from the dearly departed there mounted into rings and brooches. Ladies filed their autograph books, their snippets from their friends. At a time of rising commercialism, sentimental hair work became a way both to signal one's seniority and paradoxically to stay in style. Patent and talented jewelers make still practiced hair work, keeping this morbid tradition alive. Instead of using words, the always romantic Victorian preferred to communicate through flowers, while an ancient tradition, the art of expressing oneself through flowers, arrangements and specific plants blossomed in the 18th century. Kate Greenaway published one of the most popular floral dictionaries, 1884, The Language of Flower. This inventory catalogues each flower symbolism and in alphabetical order: hand flower free, warning, terrible, submission, grief, hawkweed, quick-sightedness. This tradition of talking bouquets persists to this day, evidenced by books like To Sumo Seas, the Victorian art of expressing yourself in the language of flower. This is the Cherny History channel, and sorry to my English.